When the going is good in Central Australia, it's hard to find fault with this country. Astonishing in its beauty, but also its productivity.
In the good seasons, yeah, this country's like second to none, I don't reckon. Like cattle grow here out of sight.
But bad seasons are an ever-present threat, and the margin of error is narrow when it comes to riding out dry times in Australia's arid zone. All that is certain in the toolkit is preparedness and building a deep knowledge of and respect for the land.
You've got to be prepared for the worst and have a good plan for when things do get dry. There's a bit of prediction where there's got dry times to come, but we've got plenty of good plans around what we need to do to shuffle things around.
Willie Brown and his wife Amanda are slowly learning the finer points of cattle country in the Red Centre. Having worked right across the north, they moved here to head up the cattle conglomerate that is Nawituma, Glen Helen, Napperby and Derwent Station in Central Australia for agricultural giant Hewitt. That's a breathtaking 2.7 million acres and 35,000 head of cattle. Hewitt has a big stake in the industry. As Australia's largest organic meat producer, they also run their own integrated supply chain.
Very simple in my mind, ensuring that the land's there for generations to come, almost into infinity. We have an obligation to future generations, the broader population, to ensure that the land is managed well. We're massive custodians.
This is the type of vegetation around here.
It goes to the very essence of why they, along with Bush Heritage Australia, Integrity Ag and Environment, Soil, Land, Food and Meat and Livestock Australia, are leading such an extensive sustainability study. Scientists and environmentalists are given unique access to measure and report on how Hewitt has been refining their production practices and land management with a greener focus.
And then looking at practical pathways for how to develop those and implement those for outcomes like access to market, and just identifying the credentials that should be attached to those beef products or land products that are produced off property.
And fresh off the press, preliminary results are certainly eye-opening. The study shows the growth in market opportunities can be as high as 50% when meat is grown in a farming system where natural assets and sustainable practices are an investment focus.
A lot of those things are about combining the science, understanding the practices we carry out on the land and bringing them together and really getting to a point where we can match the science and the production and how that works together to quantify what we've been doing.
The scale is hard to fathom. So far, they've conducted 700 drone flights, covering the equivalent of 2,000 MCG ovals, taken and tested 70 soil samples, and created soil maps for more than 4 million hectares of land. The sheer breadth of geography and variety of livestock means the findings will resonate right across the red meat industry. And that's exactly why Australia's peak meat body are also stumping up their dollars.
We're able to co-invest in this type of a project which gives us that geographical spread, gives us scale, gives us the spread across cattle and sheep, but also it gives us the ability to then share that information more broadly as well and demonstrate a range of options and opportunities for them.
The Food for Future project will take 3 years of documenting the practices in reducing and offsetting carbon emissions, increasing biodiversity, improving natural capital, and deploying regenerative agricultural practices. In simple terms, it'll show what actually works on the ground. After that, monetisation is considered, analysing how this environmental work can maximise branding and financial gains.
We've got to be able to be productive, we've got to feed people, we've got to be able to make money so we can pay for the stuff we need to do to look after the environment, and we shouldn't be trading off one for the other. We've got to find ways to demonstrate that we can run profitable, productive operations, and we can also improve the way that we interact with the environment.
But it's also about answering critics and undue regulation that might be heading their way.
We absolutely don't want to be in a position where somebody has a perception that we negatively impact the environment and they try and force us to do things. There's so many good things that we already do as an industry, and we want to be able to demonstrate so that we can show that we actually didn't create the problem. We're absolutely part of the solution.
It certainly has people intrigued. At a field day on one of the Hewitt properties, pastoralists, drought advisors, scientists and Indigenous rangers gathered to get an insight into sustainability, particularly around soil and rehydration, which is where the Malone Institute comes in.
The growth of grass that has just created that roughness, and that's dropped in sediment, seed and a bit of organic matter. And the water's also infiltrated into the rip lines, so there's the pool of water in the soil there that's held on for a bit longer, and then that's enabled those grasses to establish, and then that will now form that roughness, which will then slow that flow and continue the process and continue building soil further back up as it goes.
Prior to the work here, this paddock was barren, historic overgrazing and erosion most likely to blame. To the untrained eye, it's hard to determine exactly what the various dips, hills and lines mean. Right, Willie, what is this big embankment here?
We've put these banks in because we've identified this area here as a bit of a scalded country where it's had a fair bit of overgrazing, and the idea of these banks is to slow the water down. Yeah.
But station manager Willie Brown says it's paramount to get the right information and advice before revving up the machinery and getting stuck into building contour banks and weirs.
If you don't have a dumpy level or do some survey work prior to putting your banks and things in, you can run into some trouble and probably make some areas worse where you think you're probably trying to help it and you create yourself a mischief, I suppose.
That's where they've utilised the Northern Hub and Malone Institute, who've been trialling and experimenting with land rehabilitation for years. Their design skills and rehydration knowledge is evident in pictures captured after recent downpours on Glen Helen Station. You're seeing the land transform in front of your eyes, like it's very visual, the results.
Yeah, so as you look back across this flatty, I know it's a bit light on, but prior to that it was a bit like on the other side here, you know. It was desolate. Yeah, desolate. There was no ground cover at all. So within 12 months, or since November last year, we've had a couple of rainfall events and it's paying off.
Soil health is a key pillar in the Food for Future study, a recognition of getting the very fundamentals right.
All of our producers that we partner with, that's their key asset, is the land and the soils in which they produce their products. So having healthier soils and producing better products from that is a positive result.
Concerns about soil health aren't just top of mind for desert pastoralists or producers across Australia. The United Nations has declared that globally 1/3 of soils are already degraded. The good news, it also estimates that sustainably managed soils have the potential to offset as much as 34% of global agricultural greenhouse gas emissions annually. That's more than 1 billion tonnes of carbon sequestered. With good practices, farmers are certainly able to be agents of change. But only so much can be done at an individual level, and these are huge concepts to comprehend. For many producers, it's hard to know where to begin or where to get the right assistance. And while this study will help, others are underway as well. The CSIRO has recognised the lack of nationally consistent, timely and accessible soil data to support development and management decisions at a national, regional and local level. It recently launched the $15 million Australian National Soil Information System project, or ANSYS, in Darwin. It aims to provide data for Australian farmers and producers to better manage, restore and protect their soils. Back on Ngawi Tuma, a cuppa and time to continue the paddock conversations. The exchange of knowledge is critical for an industry wanting to be here in the long run.
We can have operations or we can have an industry that is profitable and productive, that has intergenerational sustainability and leaves the environment in better shape. It's kind of a good story for everybody.
I think the gains to be found in sustainability are from doing all the things that we're doing right now, like not having to push the land so hard to get the production. Concentrate on the land being in good health, then the actual animals will be able to follow that and maintain good health themselves. Society's looking for us to do better, I suppose, with a pretty unique resource.
If it's your livelihood, you've got to look after it, otherwise it's not going to be there forever. So we've got to take steps in the right direction to be a bit sustainable with our country.